Hello everyone. If you are a literature student and if you are preparing for competitive examinations, you must watch this video. Before reading any text, kindly know about the author first. Alright? Have you ever tried to impress your teacher by saying, "Sir, Shakespeare was born in 1564 and died in 1616. Well, that's a wonderful start, undoubtedly, but trust me, competitive examinations want more than just the writer's birth dates and death dates. They want you to know the writer's friends, family members, themes, pseudonyms, his friends, his enemies, his favorite themes, the characters that the writer created, and so on. Sometimes even they want you to know where the particular writer was buried. So today we are going to play a detective game. Well, I'll ask you say about 20 to 25 questions. They are simple but powerful questions that will certainly help you unlock an author's entire life and his works. Think of it like preparing a gossip file on great writers. So before reading about any text, as I told you, it's imperative to know about the author's background, guys. So the first question would be, where was the writer born? Maybe if you are learning about Shakespeare, it's imperative to know about his birthplace. He was born at Stratford of Avon. When was he born? Yes, he was born in 1564, April 23rd. And interestingly, he also died on the same date, 23rd April 1616. What was his family background? What was his childhood like? For example, you are learning about Charles Dickens. It's imperative to know about his childhood days as well. Where did the person study? For example, you all know about University Wits and the place where Milton studied. We all know where this gentleman, Robert Greene or Peele or Nash or even Shakespeare's grammar school, Christopher Marlowe. So we should know about their university name as well. For example, Shelley was expelled from a university, so you should know about the university. And who were his mentors or her mentors? Who influenced the writers to write maybe the poem or the prose or the drama or short story? When did the writer begin writing? What was his or her first published work? For example, if you are learning about Shakespeare, the first, what was his first drama? What was his last drama? Right? And then what are the writer's famous works? And which themes did the writer often write about? What style of writing did the author use? For example, you are learning about Francis Bacon. So he used aphoristic style. So it's imperative to know about the writer's style as well. And which period or which age of literature does the writer belong to? I always talk about the 5 ages. The 5 ages: Elizabethan age, Neoclassical age, Romantic age, Victorian age, and then 20th century. If I give you 10 writers' names, you should be able to arrange them in the chronological order. If I give you 10 works, you should be able to arrange them in an order. If you do so, mark my words, you can definitely clear any competitive examinations. If I give you Chaucer, Langland, Shakespeare, Christopher Marlowe, Dryden, Alexander Pope, and William Wordsworth, S.T. Coleridge, Arnold, and Tennyson, Robert Browning, and Virginia Woolf, and T.S. Eliot. Yes. So I guess I've told in an order. So first Elizabethan era, or before Elizabethan, Chaucer comes, and we'll have to place Chaucer first, and then Shakespeare and Marlowe. They were contemporaries, and John Dryden lived in the neoclassical age. Of course, Milton was also writing in that particular period, and William Wordsworth and S.T. Coleridge were living in romantic period. And during Victorian period, Arnold and Charles Darwin, right? They were all contemporaries. And during the 20th century, I hope you would have heard of the names, very famous names like T.S. Eliot and Virginia Woolf, etc. and etc. So it's imperative to know their ages. All right. If I give you 10 writers' names, if I give you 10 books names, you should be able to arrange them in an order. And who were his friends, or who were the writers? Fellow writers, contemporaries. For example, Chaucer appreciated Gower as moral Gower. So it's understood that they were bosom friends. And did the writer or writers face any struggles in their life? For example, Francis Bacon faced a lot of problems. It was believed that he was imprisoned because of the misappropriation of funds. And Oscar Wilde, the person who wrote The Importance of Being Earnest, was arrested because he had a relationship with a page boy. All right. So we have to know about the struggles that they faced during the ages. During their lives. Did the writer receive any awards or title or recognition? See, as you all know, Lord Tennyson, he was given the position called Lord Tennyson, Poet Laureate. We have to know about it. And we should also know if the writer traveled to many countries. So, did the writer travel to any other countries? Did the writer have a family of his or her own spouse or children? For example, you are learning about Shelley. You should also know about Mary Shelley. Mary Shelley was his wife, right? If you are learning about Virginia Woolf, it's imperative to know about Virginia Woolf's father. All right, because they were all very, very important people. And then, when did the writer die? Where did the writer die? Where was the writer buried? See, for example, some great people were buried in Westminster Abbey, right? And we should know about the place of burial also, the burial ground, the name of the burial ground. And what was the writer's pen name? Pseudonym, NYM. NYM means name. Homonym, it means homonym, same name. So pseudonym is false name. For example, Henry's real name is Sir Sidney Porter, but then he used O. Henry as his pen name. There are a lot of pen names, right? For example, Eric Blair had a name, and George Orwell. Yes, George Orwell had a pen name. It's believed that some women writers did not use their real names, rather they used men's names when they wrote books. And where did the writers, what is the writer's nationality? See, many a times I came across this question in competitive examinations. For example, is the writer an English guy or an Irish guy? All right. So what is the writer's nationality? What is the writer's real name? We were discussing the writer's real name a few minutes ago. What was the writer's first work and the last work? Which patron or matron supported the writer? It's believed that Shakespeare was supported by the patron and a matron, maybe the Queen Elizabeth and some of his friends. Which of the writer's works were banned or controversial? A very important question. See, for example, the necessity of atheism. When the gentleman Shelley wrote as a pamphlet, and he distributed it in his own university, and he was expelled. So in fact, that work was banned at the beginning. All right, so it's imperative to know why was Shelley expelled from the university. It's because of that particular pamphlet, the necessity of atheism. Which historical events influenced the writer's works? See, when I went through Tale of Two Cities by Charles Dickens, I understood the French Revolution influenced the writer to write about this particular fiction. And what is the author most famous for? A very important question. Which important characters did the author create? See, for example, if you are learning about Arthur Conan Doyle, which important character he create? Of course, Sherlock Holmes. All right. What is the author most well-known work? What is the author's most well-known work? Which of the author's works had the biggest impact on literature? How did the critics respond to the author's work when the work first published? See, for example, you would have heard of Apology for Poetry, right? What did Stephen Gosson write about the poetry? What did Sydney write after that? So we have to know about these questions. If you can answer all the questions that I have mentioned, mark my words, you will definitely crack any competitive examination. If you are preparing for PGTRB or UPSC or TNPSC, if you have chosen English literature as the core chapter, core paper, kindly have all these questions beside. Don't keep them aside. And try to answer the questions. If you can answer, for example, you are reading about Shelley. If you can answer all these questions, if you are reading about S.T. Coleridge, if you can answer all these questions, my dear friends, you can definitely crack any competitive examinations. It will be a cakewalk for you. Thank you so much for listening to this video. Bye-bye. Have a great day. See you.